Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm Spiguyver, this is Spiguyver Backpacking, and I'm out in the lab for another stove test. Today what we have is the Batchstovez Gram Weenie Pro. So this one is a cool little stove that has burners around the side, little indentations on the top so that you can set your stove or your pot right on top of this stove. So this is a full-on stove. So why don't we get this thing going? Let's go. Alright, so it's a little bit chilly out here in the garage, and it's been a little bit cold, and that's why these videos have kind of been delayed. But what we have today is this Gram Weenie Pro. This thing is 25 grams, and it is a self-contained little unit. It comes either with or without the wicking on here. This is fiberglass wicking, as you can see right here. And you can see the burner holes all around the edge. Inside, it is the top of a can or a bottle of sorts. Pretty small diameter, smaller than most of the other stoves I've got. So this stove, interestingly enough, is currently being made by Batchstovez and being sold on DutchwareGear.com. However, the design was done up by George Carr of Loco Libre Gear. So if you guys know George Carr, he invented this, came up with it quite a while back under a different name. Well, it was called the Gram Weenie Pro, but the company name was a different name. And then he let Sam over at Batchstovez start making these. So what I'm gonna do, same as all the other tests, we're gonna do 1 fluid ounce, that's 0.75 ounces weighed, with 12 ounces of 60-degree water in all 3 of the pots, the 700, the 550, and the Foster's pot. So let's go ahead and get this thing fueled up, ready to go, and let's see what it does. Okay, so we've got the stove fueled up. It's got the 1 ounce in there. I put about 0.72 inside and 0.03 around the outside on the wicking. I also have the water in here. It is sitting at 60 degrees. The timer is set up, ready to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and light this. Try lighting it on the inside and the outside. We're gonna wait for this thing to come to a bloom before we put the pot on there and then hit the timer. So it fired up pretty quick. A lot of light right here, so it's really hard to see it, but you can feel the heat coming off of it. And I'm gonna wait till it looks like it went out. Let's light it in the middle. There we go. Just get this thing going. It is cold out here. It's sitting at about 30 degrees out here. So the fuel is cold. It's a little bit colder out here, so I want to get this thing to a bloom. I know that it's going to burn through a little bit more fuel doing that, but I think we're going to get the most accurate burn and boil times doing it that way. And that's what we've done on several of the other stoves as well. All right, definitely have flames starting to come out of here. Not fully to a bloom yet, but I can see that it's starting to bloom. Help it along a little bit. Ignite some of those burners around the outside. All right, so it is definitely going. I'm gonna go ahead and put this pot on, hit start. We'll come back when we got a boil going. Okay, so here is the flame pattern of this stove, and this is with the 700. Now I will say I have had a little bit of issue today keeping this thing at a full bloom. I've had to keep like lifting the pot off to allow it to heat up. Then the flame pattern kind of extends back out. It seems to have settled down now. The pot has warmed up. The water's now up to 139 degrees. And so it's started to stabilize, but with cold water sitting on top of there, it has been tough keeping this thing going well. Okay, we've just passed 200 degrees at 5 minutes and 30 seconds. can hear the tone changing and getting to a boil. And there's 209 at 5 minutes 50 seconds. Let's see what burnout is. The flame pattern is starting to die down a little bit. It's definitely getting smaller. And that's burnout, 1027 for burnout. All right, next up we've got the Toaks 550. And so we've got our water in there sitting a little over 60 degrees right now. I've got the fuel in there, and this time I'm not gonna put it on the wick on the outside. I'm just gonna light it in the middle because it didn't seem that it made a whole lot of difference. It burned out on the outside. I had to light it again on the middle, or in the inner section. So what we're gonna do is let this come to a bloom again, and we'll see if the smaller diameter pot has any difference, if it performs any differently than the other one did. So we'll see. So it does take probably close to a minute or so for it to come to a bloom. So if you wanted to, you could add that to the burn time at the end. I chose not to, but you could if you wanted to. All right. Looks like we're starting to get some of the jets burning. Okay, there we go. I will call that a bloom. Looks good. Starting the timer. And there's 200 degrees at 4 minutes and 50 seconds. There's a boil at 5 minutes, 10 seconds, rolling boil. Let's see what burnout is. Okay, the flames are gone. 9:56 for burnout, 9:56. Okay, we're back for the final test, this time with the Foster's pot. So, smaller diameter, with a smaller diameter, this one may work out pretty well. We saw the 550 actually performed a little bit better than the 700. I've got the fuel right here, pouring it in. Spilled a little bit, that's okay. That can be used to help get this thing going. Reset the timer, I've got water sitting right at 61 degrees. Light this, like the stuff that was down there. And again, we will wait for this thing to come to a bloom. 1 fluid ounce, 12 ounces of colder water, 61 degrees. It's been 60, 61 degrees on all of these tests. Definitely did a better job with the 550 as far as it did not soak out the heat, and so it stayed bloomed a little bit better. So we'll see what happens here with this one. Again, there is a little bit of residual heat there in the board, just the board that it's sitting on, and that could factor in just a little bit. So we're almost to a bloom here. That looks pretty good. I'm gonna call that a bloom. Set this pot down on there, hit start, and we'll come back. So with this pot, it has been very, very temperature sensitive, and I keep having to lift it up off of the stove in order for it to come back to a bloom, because the bloom shrinks down, and then I have to pick it up, it heats it back up. And so it's been a little bit more temperamental with this one. And I think it's because of the way that this pot sits down on there quite a bit more. And it kind of, I don't know, it's not letting it heat up quite as much. But it seems like now it has finally got to the point where it is sustaining itself. So we will see what boil time is. There is 200 degrees at a much slower 7 minutes and 8 seconds. We'll see what burnout is with this one. Boil was at 7 minutes and 38 seconds. 7 minutes, 38 seconds for the boil. I believe the flames are finally starting to die down just a little bit. And there they go. That's burnout at 15:22. So that was kind of an interesting result that we had there. So this is the Gram Weenie Pro. Cool little stove that we've got that we were using and testing today. So it took a little bit shorter time with the 550 than it did with the 700. So it was 5 minutes and 10 seconds to come to a boil using the 550, 5 minutes 50 seconds with the 700. With the 550, we came to a burnout at just shy of 10 minutes. With the 700, it was just about 10 and a half minutes. Now, then we used the Foster's pot. Now the Foster's pot is a little bit unique, a little bit different. It has that domed bottom. And so I usually see that the boil times can be off quite a bit, but the burnout times are usually pretty consistent and stay within about a minute across the 3 different pots. This one was way off in that we had over 15 minutes with the Foster's pot. Same amount of fuel, it was just burning much differently. I had a lot of trouble actually getting it going. So I think I'm going to throw the Foster's pot out of the equation that goes up on the board because it is such an anomaly, so far outside of what's going on with the pots that I would normally use. Now, you guys saw it here, you can figure out what you want to take from that, but I'm gonna get this stuff up, get it on the board, and so let's take a look at the current leaderboard. Here is the current leaderboard. The Gram Weenie Pro comes in 4th fastest on the fastest boil. It comes 3 from the bottom on longest burn, and then for fuel used, it's a 0.49 right below the Storm and Cone, and that's because we had to go out to decimals and the Storm and Cone beat it out. Alright guys, the Gram Weenie Pro by Batchstovez. You can get it on DutchwareGear.com. What I will say is I think this one was at a disadvantage during this test, during the conditions that I'm currently in. This one seems to be extremely, extremely temperature sensitive. If I was to do this again in the summer, I think that it would have faster boil times and I think it would perform a little bit better. But this is kind of the conditions it's in, and this is what we got today. So you guys saw the leaderboard, saw where it sat. Now, it's still a cool little stove. It works well, but is it something I'm gonna take? Now, because it is small, it is suited more for those smaller pots like that 550. When you get to that 700, it is a little bit tippy. It's about as small around, maybe even a little bit smaller around than the Spiguyver stove, which is one that I've stopped using a little bit because of how tippy it can be. So that's something to consider. 25 grams, it's not the lightest, it's definitely not the heaviest out there. It's got the name Gram Weenie Pro because it's light, and it is pretty light, but it's not as light as some of the others out there. So you have to figure out for yourself whether or not it is the right choice. Like I said, there was that anomaly with the Foster's pot, so we took that one out of the equation, and those numbers are not up on the board back there, and they would change things significantly, but I felt that it was a little bit too outside of the confines of the numbers that we normally see, and so I did not want to include that. Up for test next week is this stove. So this is a stove that I just recently got. This is from my survival pack, and this is the Core alcohol stove. And so we'll be testing this very unique stove design out next time. So come back. If you guys like this series, if you like what I'm doing here, please go down below, hit the subscribe button. Right next to that, there's a little bell icon. If you hit that, you'll get a notification every time I upload a new video. I appreciate you guys checking this out. If you have any comments, any feedback, leave it down below. I will see you guys down the trail.